You know, I think, you know, you have to stick your neck out. You know, you kind of have to, sometimes circumstance will bring that person to you. As a bass player, the bass community tends to be a little more close-knit than guitar players or drummers sometimes. I think maybe it's just a little more because of the musical philosophy behind the bass is sort of like, hey, you're rushing, you're dragging, it's right here in the middle. Let's all get together. That's the bass player thing. You know, it's, come on, let's just all feel good. It's all about feeling good. And so for me, you know, as a road player, coming here and just being a touring guy, you know, immediately I heard about Joe Allen, who was playing bass on the Don Williams records. And Joe was always very nice to me, but honestly, I was scared of him. Just because I didn't really know him, and Don would invite me to the studio, and I'm like, why would he want me to be here in the studio? And Joe was always very nice to me, but it took me a little while longer to get, again, as you meet more people and you get a little more comfortable kind of going, you know, boy, I'd love to, you know, like, could I like buy you breakfast sometime? And like a friend of mine, Kenny Malone, incredible drummer, percussionist. Kenny is 70 years old, the youngest guy I know. He's unbelievable, and drummers seek him and find him out. He's been playing on hit records all the way back to Dobie Gray, Drift Away. Next time you hear that record, wait till the breakdown and the vocals, listen to the sound of the kick drum, and you'll hear Kenny Malone. It's unbelievable, from 1971. And Kenny would gladly, he'd just say, you know, what happened with me is people would ask me for lessons, and I'd say, no, let's just go have a cup of coffee or something, and I'll talk to you, because I'm more comfortable doing that. But looking back, you know, you do have to seek out those who know more than you. And I think that inevitably that can lead to a particular person coming into that role as a mentor. I mean, for me as a musician, because I had a little bit of training as a kid playing string bass, and then at 12 or 13, I traded the string bass in on an electric and started rocking and never looked back, and it's all been pretty much self-taught since then. But just getting with people who are better than you, that's how you learn. It's like jumping in the deep end of the pool and learning how to swim as opposed to staying in the shallow end. You have to put and it's not the easiest thing to do. You have to kind of expose yourself. You're sort of going, here's my guts, I'm doing what I can, you know. And so as you meet these people, you know, your mentor may come in a very unlikely place. It might be someone you meet outside the music business who is part of the business. You know, for me, there were just very pivotal moments where it was more like a validation. Like Jim Horn, the fantastic saxophone player. Jim moved to Nashville in the mid-'80s and played on a couple of sessions for Don Williams, and he was a huge fan. And Don expanded his group in 1985, and Jim Horn came out on the road with us. And it was like, and I mean, you could have pinched me for, you know, 6 months. And as I got to know Jim and realized that he's just a great guy, and really the great musicians that I've met in my life, people like Duane, Eddy, and you know, they're beautiful people and they're nice people, and that's the great thing about Nashville is we're full of these kind of people. I mean, Steve Winwood is about the nicest guy you would ever meet in your life. I mean, even to the point where he'll like reintroduce himself to you to make sure you know who he is. It's like, are you kidding me? And so, you know, those kind of people, it's almost like Nashville's a town where you could have many mentors, but it's like that kindred spirit. And I think my generation of musicians are perhaps a little bit guilty of not reaching out to the younger generation as much. Mainly because we were the freelance guys that weren't the A-team, but we were coming up the ladder. And there's a certain level of, like, protecting your territory that is important, and you have to do that. But, you know, like I was talking about earlier about being a nice person, there are different ways to do that. And I was never comfortable going after somebody's gig. If circumstances led me to replace someone who was a friend of mine, you know, I would do it, you know, but I would never go after somebody's job. It's just not my way. And so it's just learning how to act and learning how to just be a good person. You're going to attract those other people that want to help you. I mean, for me, Don Williams, Garth Fundus, Jim Rooney, Randy Scruggs, you know, they're my peers and they're my heroes. And you know, and leading by example, Richard Bennett. You know, Richard Bennett and Randy Scruggs are two guys, and Barry Beckett, you know. Barry was so nice to me. I mean, and it was like, you're Barry Beckett. Oh, my God. You know, and for me, David Hood, who played bass on a lot of those great Muscle Shoals records, and we become really good friends. but it's like I still kind of go, man, I'm hanging out with David Hood, and I don't ever want to lose that enthusiasm. So all those guys I count as my mentors, but particular people. Garth Fund has taught me an awful lot about the studio and being a producer, being a player, playing for the song, and it was an extension of Don's thing. And then people like Randy Scruggs and Richard Bennett can be out in the room producing a record, sitting in a booth playing acoustic guitar, and like with their vision being 360 degrees, and it's like they're in their booth and out in the room and in the control room all at once. And I remember vividly a session we were doing with Emmylou Harris that Richard was producing, and it was, we got a little hung up, and we did many takes of a song, and there were some technical issues we were dealing with, and we cut like 15, 16 takes of this song before we went in to listen to anything. And I'll never forget Richard, who's a very quiet, wonderful guy. Richard comes in, he goes, okay, I'd like to hear the first half of number 11, and I want to hear the second verse of number 13, and then I want to hear the back half of number 14. And it was just like, man, how did you keep track of that? Because we were having a bad day with the headphones, and everything was kind of swimming and getting kind of crazy. And I was just blown away. And I asked him later, he goes, it's just a little mental checklist. And you learn to do that as a player, like, oh, I made a mistake. Where was that? Okay, so you remember when you get to the end of the take, hey, I need the second bar of the third verse, and because you have to police your own area as a player in the studio. And so, it's just about being conscientious, being professional. But so many mentors, so many great people, and I know I've left other people off, but, someone like Duane Eddy, I mean, what a nice guy. He's the nicest guy you could ever meet, and yet one of the most influential guitar players of all time. Chet Atkins was very, very great to me. I mean, I was already pretty sure I knew everything when I finally got to work with Chet, and he invited me to hang out. He had like this standard Saturday morning breakfast club out at the Cracker Barrel, and you never knew who was going to show up. It was incredible. It might be Mark Knopfler one week, and the next week it'd be Goober from Andy Griffith, or it would be David Bearwald from David and David, or Brent Mason, or you just never knew who it was going to be. John D. Loudermilk, and it was such a great experience, and it just taught me. I was maybe at the verge of getting a little bit full of myself, and it just taught me that, hey man, there's always more to learn, because Chet never stopped. Owen Bradley was the same way. Owen was so nice to me. And I did some really fun dates with him, and he was just a very, very special guy. And Nashville has a history of these people, and we're all very lucky to be part of that community. So I'd say if you're looking for a mentor in the music business, this is a good. Nashville's a real good place to start.